Welcome to the Exploratorium's live stream celebration of World Oceans Day. My name is Kathleen McGuire, and I'm a senior program developer with the Exploratorium's Arts and Public Programs teams. World Oceans Day is a global movement to celebrate, preserve, and protect Earth's life support system. Earlier today, the Exploratorium shared another program titled Observing and Exploring. In that show, my colleague Mary Miller dug into ocean robots, ocean motion, and the amazing life that lives in one drop of bay or ocean water. That program, along with many other ocean stories and additional ocean resources, can be found on the Exploratorium's website. And we also want to get you a little bit involved in today's programming. If you have a favorite photo of the shore, please share it and use this hashtag, #ShareYourShore. And be sure to tag the Exploratorium if you do that. So we're pleased to have you joining us for the next hour for Studies in Sight and Sound, which take an artist's lens to the ocean. We'll be sharing out two short films, Life by the Tide from Josh Cassidy and a herring opera from Tessa Ellie Schmidt. And we also have a soundscape to share with you titled Sounds in the Sea. That piece is a collaboration between musician and composer Kristina Dutton, bioacoustician Michael Stoker, and audio producer and engineer Bo Sorensen. And for all of these pieces, we'll be able to hear directly from the artists, either in conversation or through an introduction. So we'll get our program started with Life by the Tide by Josh Cassidy, and Josh will be joining us after the screening to share a little bit more about how he made the film, what drew him to these tide pools, and also where his career has gone since he made Life by the Tide. Please enjoy. I hope you enjoyed watching Life by the Tide by Josh Cassidy, and I'm pleased to have him here with me now to tell you a little bit more about the film. Welcome, Josh.
Hi, thanks very much for having me.
And Josh, I think this was your student film, is that true?
Yeah, this is actually my first film. So what you're seeing on screen is me sort of teaching myself how to use a camera. I left out all the out of focus shots and the very expensive POV shot of me and my camera falling into the Pacific.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that didn't make the cut.
So what drew you to the tides that you documented in the film?
Yeah. So yeah, it was my first film. I was first trying my hand at wildlife filmmaking, and I figured that it would be kind of appropriate for me to go back to one of my favorite childhood activities, which was searching around in tide pools. Kind of never know what you're going to find in there. It's always sort of exciting, and I decided that it would be a good topic for a film because, well, first they can't really run away; they're in the tide pools. And then also it's something that doesn't get covered that much. People in most wildlife films you see on television, or you know, cheetahs chasing the gazelle across the plain, or something like that. I'm typically more interested in like the sort of smaller dramas that happen when you lift up a rock or something like that.
And that makes a lot of sense with where your career path has taken you. Could you share
Yeah.
a little bit more about that?
Yeah. So when Life by the Tide first came out, it got into a few film festivals, including the San Francisco International Ocean Film Festival. And while I was at that festival, I met a producer from KQED who encouraged me to do an internship with KQED Science, the science department there. And that turned into a full time position. And about 5 years ago, I pitched a new series called Deep Look, which is a macro wildlife video series. So it's a video series about tiny things. It's produced by KQED and PBS Digital Studios. And we have about 100 episodes that are up on YouTube that you can all watch anytime you like, up there for free for everybody. And if you'll see that the shooting style is pretty similar. I sort of developed my way of shooting in the tide pools, and I've carried that over into this new series.
Oh, that's great. And it points to something that's really amazing about your work and filmmaking in general, which is the power to give us humans the ability to observe things that our human eye can't without technical intervention. So I wonder if you could talk a little bit about the techniques you used in Life by the Tides to let us see a starfish move
Yeah,
somewhat quickly.
yeah. Um, yeah, this has turned out to be one of my favorite things in filmmaking, is just what you're able to see with the powerful macro lenses, and with Deep Look, I use a lot of microscope shots as well, which is really interesting. For Life by the Tide, it really the thing that helped me film it the most was just a homemade. I don't even know what it would be called, but it's basically a tube that fits on the end. I made to fit with tape onto the front of my lens, and then at the end of the tube is a piece of clear plexiglass. And that allowed me to break the surface tension, because if you just try to film through water, you'll see all the ripples on the surface. But if you sort of get past that, then everything becomes much more clear. So that's how I was able to get the clear shots of like the anemone, or things like that. And then I did a lot of long shots, a lot of things. Some things in the tide pools move quickly, but a lot of them move very slowly. And that was sort of something I tried to capture with the film, is that sort of languid motion that so many of the things have there. And yeah, at the end, the sort of star of the film is that bat star. And that whole sequence probably took an hour for it to very slowly move down under, as the sort of waves moved away and it found itself stranded. It moved down the side of the rock and then submerged itself again. So it took a lot of patience, which, as it turns out, I have. I was always surprised to find that out about myself. But as long as I'm interested in it, I'm happy to sit there and watch a sea star take 45 minutes to crawl under a rock.
Wow. So recorded in real time and then sped up for those of us who don't have your patience.
It's still pretty slow. And honestly, I was surprised when you zoom in really close. Small little motions actually look a lot bigger and faster. So something like a butterfly, which looks like it's fluttering and sort of lovely, If you zoom way in on it, it looks really frenetic, like it's moving super fast. So something like a bat star, it actually helps because if you stare at it from 5 feet away, it's moving a little bit, barely perceivable. But if you zoom way in, you really see a lot more action.
I love that how you made this film included a sort of tinkering style of problem solving where a tool you didn't have access to, and you figured out how to make it on your own.
Yeah,
Um,
it's become a big part of my career actually. Regularly for deep look, I'll have to build a terrarium or an aquarium just for the day in order to get the super close up shots. There's constant. Every shoot is different, and there's always something I need to figure out that's a different. There's a lot of chewing. What do they say? Masking tape and chewing gum or whatever. Just trying to make things work for the moment, get the shots, and then move on to the next one.
and Deep Look has a very deep catalog now. So I wonder if you have an automatic sort of favorite in the collection or some that you want to point out.
Yeah, I have a few favorites. One of my favorites is the sea urchin episode. You think of sea urchins as just this ball of spikes that just sits there, but they have their childhood there when they're larvae. Um, they they travel the oceans and they look like a tiny little spaceship. They look like a little lunar lander, and they go on this sort of grand adventure before they settle down, turn themselves inside out, and become an actual sea urchin. And spend the rest of their life
Wow,
eating algae.
that's
So that's one of my
amazing.
favorites. So with deep look, it's either about something tiny, like plankton or fleas, things like that, or it'll be about some small aspect of a larger animal. So I also really like the owl episode. It talks about how the structures on the feathers help them fly quietly. So it's really zooming in with the microscope to see these little. Basically, they have fuzzy feathers. It acts like a sound blanket to help make them quiet when they fly, so they can sneak up on their prey.
And if people want to dig into that Deep Look catalog, where would they go to find it?
Oh yeah, it's all on YouTube. We have over 100 episodes now. We're on our seventh season, and we're still making more.
Are you
Just
making any right now in our shelter in place time?
we are indeed. It's been a big challenge to everything except for the actual shooting has moved to work from home pretty easily. All the editing and research and making calls, things like that are okay, but actually getting out in the world to film things has been a big challenge. First, I'm not supposed to you're supposed to stay home. Also, the labs I typically go to film in and the researchers I usually film with are not available. The microscope labs that I typically go to are shut down for a while. So we've sort of pulled in the sails a little bit, but we're still actually able to make some really cool episodes because one of the coolest things about Deep Look is that we can tell these stories that are about animals that are familiar, but show them in a new way. So, for example, we have an episode that's going to be coming out about dandelions, which I had no idea dandelions are so active. Every morning they open, every night they close back up. Just the pupus, the pappus, the little like seeds that you see, when you blow on the little dandelion tuft, they create this vortex that keeps them in the air. There's all this really interesting science with them. And then I'm also working on an episode about ducks, actually, duck feathers. How their feathers sort of how the feather itself is structured in a way that makes it water resistant but breathable to keep them warm and dry in the water.
Wow.
Yeah. So I've
And
been spending a bunch of time at the duck pond. It's
that's
not my
great.
most exotic fare, but it's been fun.
Also, looping back to Life by the Tides, one of the most specific activities that Californians are allowed to do is tide pooling. So, is there anything else you wanted to share about Life by the Tides?
Yeah, I was actually the place where I filmed Life by the Tide, as far as I know, is still actually shut down just because it's so or closed off. Just because so many people like to go there that there were too many people there. But it's a great activity. It's one of those things where really nice tide pools draw people, and then when people go, every footstep you have to be careful because you can crush the things that you're there to see. So they say a lot of these places get loved to death. So it's just really important that if you do go, to be very respectful, don't turn over rocks. Don't pick things up. You can observe them from a you know you can sit by the side of the tide pool and watch all the creatures. And another thing is that if you just walk past, a lot of the creatures will hide themselves if they're scared. But if you sort of relax and take a couple breaths and just relax, be quiet for a moment, you'll start to notice there's way more activity in those tide pools.
Well, thank you so much, Josh. This was
Thank you.
great.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Hi, everyone, and thank you for tuning in to the Exploratorium's live stream on World Oceans Day. I'm Kate O'Donnell, and I work here at the Exploratorium in our environments group. And I am joined today by Michael Stocker and Kristina Dutton, who are going to help introduce this beautiful soundscape that they have made. So let's start with you, Michael. If you could introduce yourself and maybe tell us a little bit about your role on this project as well.
Okay, thanks for this opportunity, and thank you for joining us on Ocean Day. Opportunity to honor that source of life on the planet. And my name is Michael Stocker. I am a marine bioacoustician and director of ocean conservation research. Our organization is looking at the impacts of human-generated noise on marine habitat, marine animals, which springs out of this understanding that sound in the ocean is much like light on terrestrial settings, where it's really how animals sense where they are, how they communicate and establish their relationship with their surroundings. And this is also one where humans are using sound in similar ways with sonar and underwater communication systems, but also we're muddying it up with a lot of noise from shipping and exploration, seismic survey work, mechanical sounds that are disrupting the animals' acoustical habitat in the ocean. So this is what we're studying and trying to figure out if we can come up with mitigation plans and other ways of engaging the ocean that's more helpful. But to get an idea of the breadth of this, animals have been adapting to the acoustical environment of the ocean for billions of years at this point. And sound travels really easily in the ocean. You can actually hear a sound 2,000, 3,000 miles away, which would be difficult in air environment. And so animals have adapted this. There are animals that communicate over thousands of miles. And there's also very subtle local cues that animals get between particle motion and pressure gradient motion. Fish can determine how close or far away sounds are from them and whether it's a threat or it's an opportunity. So the acoustical environment of the ocean is very complex, very complicated, and as a result, it's all very beautiful. So we're going to kind of explore this a little bit in this piece and see what we can do with it.
Wonderful. And Kristina, could you please introduce yourself and talk a little bit about your role in this project?
Yeah, thanks, Kate. So I'm a composer. I have a long-time career previously in the performing arts as a violin player, but I've also been interested in the biological and ecological sciences for a long time and spent a little time studying that as well in college. I've been interested in interdisciplinary work and finding ways to work directly with scientists. And when I discovered Michael's organization, I was really excited by what they were doing, and I reached out to say hello and kind of see if they needed any help on a volunteer basis, and then we talked and ended up deciding to work together on an outreach art project, which is amazing because bioacoustics specifically are obviously really well suited to someone who's working with sound. So so we've been working on this together, various ideas around outreach for about a year together.
Wonderful. So maybe you could walk us through a little bit about what it is that we're going to be hearing.
So we're going to be starting. We're going to be hearing the sound of the ocean, of our local coast here in the Bay Area, And it's going to start with some of the smaller animals right off the coast and the estuaries here. And then we're going to travel down to Monterey and over the canyon to more pelagic sounds of whales and other animals.
Wonderful. So of all of the sounds that we're hearing, they were all recorded locally. Is that correct?
I think
Some of them, most of them have, but yeah, we are, I've got a library of sounds that have been collecting over the past 25 years. For example, there's a minke whale in there that has an amazing, like, boing. It was recorded in the Atlantic, but we have minke whales here, so we can assume that they have that in their vocabulary here, or some sounds similar to that. But by and large, yeah, they're all biologically accurate.
Wonderful. And what are some of the ones that are most captivating to you that we're going to be hearing?
Well, I mean, I definitely have always been particularly in love with whales, so I have a little bit of a bias towards my enthusiasm around whale song and whale sounds. Anything from the quirkiness and the clicks of the belugas to the much more human-like, or I feel they sound human-like in the humpback calls, only because their vocalizations are more similar to what feels like a song. But there are so many incredible sounds. The Arctic region, which is not going to be part of our soundscape now, but Michael has many examples of it in his sound library and some on his website, has incredible sounds with the seals. And then there are just really surprising things in our ocean with tiny little fish making really big noises in unexpected ways. Michael, maybe you want to tell them about that a little bit?
Yeah, fish are interesting. They don't have an auditory bandwidth for the most part that would indicate they are hearing a lot. But there's an awful lot of evidence that they are hearing very complex sound environments, even with that fairly simple auditory range that we understand. But I guess one of the most iconic of the fish sounds in terms of what really brought people's attention to underwater sounds after Roger Payne's recording, gold record recording, by the way, of the sounds of the song of the humpback whale, was John Acosta's understanding of the midshipman, which was creating quite a disruptive racket in Sausalito Harbor, where the anchorouts were, and they were hearing this humming that was incredibly loud, and people thought it was aliens or the Navy was doing some horrible program or whatever. And it turns out it's this little 6-inch long fish. And when they have their breeding cycle, they hum away, and it is really noisy. So that's one of the sounds that I think is pretty remarkable. There are sounds that fish make, which we have no, chorusing is, what are these animals doing? Why are they doing this together? So there's a lot of mysteries there.
Wonderful. I'm really excited to hear it. I do also want to mention that we have a longer version of the soundscape on our website, as well as a listening guide with further conversation with Michael and Kristina, as well as a couple of bioacoustic scientists. But without further ado, we're going to get to this. But before we do, Kristina, is there anything else that you would like us to be sort of thinking about or reflecting on as we listen?
Sure, thanks. Well, one thing that was, as I learned more, I was really surprised by the mechanisms that animals use actually to make these sounds. So that's something when you're listening, just the relationship of the size of the animal or how they might be producing the sound is really a fascinating thing to learn and to think about. And it definitely has helped me to reflect on communication and the purpose of sound. I also, in the time that we're in now, when we made this soundscape, we had tossed around a lot of ideas about in different forms of our project when and where to include anthropogenic sound, which is human-generated noise. And in this instance, we decided to just go with the sound of the ocean as though there was no sound contributed by us, no noise pollution in the ocean. So thinking about what's going on in the world right now, and that things have been a little quieter and that there's a little bit less noise in the ocean, and there's a little respite for these animals in terms of ease of their communication. This is an example of the natural orchestration of the ocean. So
Wonderful. Well, I invite everyone to put in your headphones as we begin to listen.
Hi, my name is Ellie Schmidt. I am a artist and filmmaker living and working in Sitka, Alaska. I've been here for about 5 years, but I'm originally from Colorado. I first came into this project when I met a friend named Andrew Tomes from the Sitka Conservation Society, and he turned me on to this idea of the herring um, because I was working on my underwater photography and trying to get my camera into the water as much as possible. And he was like, the herring is a spectacular underwater phenomenon. And so over the next year, I followed this herring story without knowing much about it, and basically learning as I went. So a lot of people ask me when they see this film for the first time, they ask me, how did I come up with this structure with the opera music? And the truth is that I had this sort of mishmash of footage at the end of filming, and I was having a hard time organizing it together. And so using this opera music helped me give it sort of a narrative structure, a climactic rise and fall, as well as allowing me to divide the story up into these disparate acts. So there's like the introduction, the middle, the drama, and then sort of this like sweet ending. The story is clearly about the struggle between human fishermen and traditional cultures and the environment, but I tried to present it as much as I could in an objective way so that the viewer can come up with their own conclusions at the end. And you'll see my conservationist self come out a little bit, but I try very hard to present it objectively as a commercial fisherman myself. Yeah, it's a very, very complicated and controversial issue. Yeah, so I hope that you all enjoy it. I'm really excited to share this film on the Exploratorium platform at this time. I think it's really awesome that they're still doing stuff like this. And thanks very much.
goes right, Andy goes left, we're in the middle, we make a big old loop, huge loop, you know, in front of everyone. Everyone's going crazy. It's gotta be you, let her go, Al, let her go. Make a big old circle. It's calm, it's all calm. Start pursing me, full purse in, full purse up the net. As soon as we get the rings up, the whole net just starts boiling. The whole net just glittering gold. You know, glitter gold is what they call it. That was a rush and a half. I hope it happens again this year.
And everything's starting to bloom. And there's one place where the boats are anchored in there. I don't know what it is with that island too. There's always bees there. It's the only place to see bees this time of year. So we should just stop in there just to look and see if they're flying around.
boy. Tlingit is Kayech, means calm water, or calm here. And his Russian name is Tikhon. So if you say somebody Tika, 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 it means shh, shh, shh. And if you know his middle name, Gavin is Russian for harbor, which is a calm place to put a boat. So his name is Calm, Calm, Calm. And my boo-boo, Giovanna. Are you hungry now? What kind of food do you want? Gummies? No, that's not food. That's candy. What do you want? What kind of sandwich? Peanut butter, really? Okay.
Did it say I get to eat anything?
No candy. Just eat food.